Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another edition of the USSF Talks every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, we have a very special conversation here where we are going to talk about Spiritist literature, enlightenment tool for the immortal spirits. My name is João Korngold. I'm very happy to be here today with Andreia Marshall, with Marcelo Netto, and with Jussara Korngold. We are all part of the work in books. So part of the publishers, part of the Spiritist literature in this country, in the US, but also outside of Brazil in terms of the publications in different languages. So we are going to have a friendly conversation that we are going to start from the origins, from where spiritualism actually started in 1848 with the Sisters Fox here in the state of New York. So I'm going to invite Jussara to talk a little bit about this very beginning of the spiritualist movement and the first publications that happened, Spiritist publications and others that happened in the 19th century here in the US. Ju.
So hello, everyone. Hi, Andreia, Marcelo, João, and hi, everyone that is listening to us. It is not uncommon for us to, when people know that we are practicing Spiritism in the US, to be curious about how it is, how it has been the work, and especially in terms of literature, Spiritist literature in English, what do we have and how it was all the beginning. And I think when we are talking about Spiritism in the beginning of all things, we should always mention, the historic day of March 31st, 1848, which is the day that we celebrate, that marks the first moment, or the record moment that was the kick up for everything to happen in terms of spiritualism and modern spiritualism and spiritism. That is the phenomena that happened with the Fox sisters in Hydesville, New York, here in the United States. And it's interesting because we also have someone that is very well considered in terms of literature in this country, that is Andrew Jackson Davis. And on this day, March 31st, 1848, when he was waking up, he said that he heard a voice that was saying, as he was waking up, that was saying, "Brother, the good work has begun. Behold, a living demonstration is born." And it was in the same day that everything, the phenomena, start happening. Having said that, we are not trying to say that phenomena didn't happen before. We have examples of phenomena in the Bible and so many other parts of the world, even before this date. But it's actually what gave the impulse, so to say, for things to start happening, not only in this country, but then after traveling to Europe, and in this case, when it reached some of the salons and seances that were happening in France, our Allan Kardec, Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, was invited to participate in one of them, and he started really asking question for the spirits to know about that. So this was the beginning, and the beginning of all this movement that then traveled to the rest of the world. It became even more important in Brazil with all the development that we had there. But then when we are talking about Spiritist literature in English, actually everything started with Allan Kardec. But Allan Kardec, after he discarnated, we have in the Spiritist Review of 1869 a communication from the spirit Kardec where he manifests himself in a seance in England at the house of Miss Anne Blackwell, and there was present also other spiritualists, Mr. Peebles, that is very well known here in this country as well. And while Kardec was talking about the importance of uniting both movements and telling that in the spirit realm there is no difference in terms of nationalities, there was a point in the message where he tells everyone, and of course Miss Anne Blackwell, that was the medium at this point, he said, "Translate my works." And the reason why he said that is that because we, as the modern spiritualists at that point, only had arguments against reincarnation. But when they would be capable of demonstrating this principle, and it would become more popular, and then there would be a union and a more understanding in terms of reincarnation. So it was Allan Kardec himself, as a spirit, that asked Anne Blackwell to start the translation, which she did in the 1870s. She started translating the Spirit's book, then Heaven and Hell, and then Genesis. And of course, this movement went to other countries, and it was translated into other languages as well. But we always have to have in mind that the importance of this first work and these words to Kardec, to Miss Anne Blackwell, and how much it was impossible, it made it possible as well for us here in the US to be able to, at least at the beginning, have these three important books from the collection of the five main books of Allan Kardec in this country, and then everything started. So and we have a lot of history after that, and I guess Marcelo is going to talk about us a little bit about this.
Yeah, just a small correction here. It was not Genesis, it was the Medium's book that she translated. She translated the Spirit's book, the Medium's book, and Heaven and Hell.
Yeah, that's
the Genesis was translated by Mr. Colville, but he did a translation that was not exactly a item by item translation. It was more an adaptation of the book. And the Gospel According to Spiritism was, I believe, the French translation was done by Janet Duncan in the UK in the 1970s, right? 1990s, sorry.
1990s.
Yeah, but then after Anna Blackwell, what happened is that the Spiritist movement here in the US spent a long time under was conducted by immigrants from Spanish-speaking countries, and so the first Spiritist centers in the 20th century were all based from Spanish-speaking individuals, Mr. Edgar Crespo and others. But by the end of the 60s, started a different story that Marcelo is going to bring to us. A little bit of that part of the story, right, Marcelo?
It's first of all, thank you very much for having us here, and it's a true blessing to be here and speaking about like this fantastic tool, which is a book that illuminates our hearts, our mind, and brings so much comfort to that. It's a promise consoler, as the Spirit of Truth mentioned to one of the books of Allan Kardec. And I like it very much. I enjoy listening to Jussara when she brought like the beginning, like mentioning Anna Blackwell, mentioning the beginning of the modern spiritualism. And this is it's fantastic. But João, you mentioned, well, there's like a little gap from Anna Blackwell, and when we saw exactly what happened here in US, I can recall It was in May 1965. I can recall maybe Francisco Cândido Xavier arriving in United States for the very first time. And he initially visiting a family, the Salim Haddad's family. But during his visit in US, he left behind a trail of light. And because of his visit here with Valdo Vieira, I think maybe something different happened in that specific date, 1965. So just to have like a little history of this gentleman, Salim Haddad. He was born in Brazil. He's descended from a Lebanese family, but he was very motivated to come over here because he was involved in the textile industry, and I guess he was an engineer. Correct me if I'm wrong, João. And he came over here. He established himself with Phyllis, his wife. She was from a British descendants. She was born in Brazil, but the family was British. They established in North Carolina. And because of that visit, we're going to see many things happening, many things actually taking like a kick, if I would say. And after a decade of studies and exchanging letters with Chico Xavier, he established the first group in that region, in that area. And interesting because part of this story, it's published in the book Among Brothers of Other Lands. We can see a little bit of his story, the first visit of Chico Xavier, on this book, Among Brothers of Other Lands, that published by Odyssey of America. Interesting. Jesus is fantastic because in this work of uniting people from all parts of the world, but especially between the Americas, we see many people migrating from Brazil to United States and Canada. And many of them, João, Jussara, and Andreia, and the audience that is listening to us, many of them, without realizing the spiritual plans, believing that they are simply seeking professional opportunities and a better quality of life. Just like Salim Haddad, maybe just like me, maybe just like Jussara, João, Andreia. When we first came here, we're looking for something else. I'm talking about in my case, not specifically to join in the Spiritist movement. And we arrived here, we see 1965. A few books were translated. We can see the work of, there's one lady, if I can remember, Miss Hazel Morris. Hazel Morris, she was a lady from Louisiana. She met Salim Haddad and Francisco Cândido Xavier, and she initiated the translation of a few books of Emmanuel. It's interesting. If you Google it, you're going to see, and you do a little research, Mrs. Hazel Morris, she passed away in 2012. She was almost 100 years old. And you will see this fantastic lady making a few translations from the book, from the work of Chico and Emmanuel. And everything happens in such a nice way. Interesting. But there's like actually a big gap from 1965 to, I would say, maybe 1973, when we see, and I see, João, that you mentioned about the work of a few Spanish people. Actually, they're Cubans. They first arrived in Miami around like the late 50s and the beginning of 60s. And we see the presence of one of the guys by the name Guerreiro Ovalle. And he started like making translations from Portuguese to Spanish from the books of Francisco Cândido Xavier and Divaldo Pereira Franco. When Divaldo came at the very first time in US, if I'm not mistaken, was 1974, 1973. They got acquaintance with this group, the Cuban Americans here in Miami, and a lot of translations from Portuguese to Spanish took place back in that moment. But was exactly in 1990 when many Brazilians came to US. A lot of Brazilians came to US with a little background in Spiritism. And we're going to see a difference in translations. Even Jussara is over here. João over here. I was coming, when I first came to US, when I first came was 1974, but it was a boy, you know. But in that first time that I came here to establish my residence, my domicile over here, was in the middle of 1990s. And I see so much work being done in order to disseminate Spiritism, and especially initiating a few works translating the codification and other books from Emmanuel and others from the psychographed works of Divaldo Franco. It was very interesting. But I don't want to be here talking alone. I want to get like maybe a few information from Andreia. Maybe Jussara can share a little bit.
I was thinking of Andreia, as she's going to talk about LEAL, that if she can talk a little bit about Divaldo, his journey here, Divaldo, the Paul the Apostle of the modern times, right? Because
if I may, because Marcelo mentioned Salinidad, and actually it's very important that you mention him, Marcelo, because to my knowledge, when we arrived here also in 1996, there were only 5 books in English and that we could get our hands on, which was the 3 books from the codification that we mentioned, the Gospel, the Spirit's book, and the Medium's book. And then 2 of them, the other 2, were from Salinidad. The Astral City, which was an abridged version of Nosso Lar, and then Christian Agenda. So considering what he had at that time, and I mean that was very resourceful. We only had 5 books until 1996, but he made it possible for us to have 2 of them as well. So I thought it was important to mention that and to pay our homage as well to him and to the whole group. That we always know that he was not working alone, and there was all these situations, all these things that happened. And so thank you, Blackwell, thank you, Salinidad, and all the pioneers, because your work is appreciated, and it was what gave us some, motivation as well to keep on going.
That's right. I want to add Janet Duncan here. She's not in the US, but she is the one that first translated the Gospel according to Spiritism into English in the beginning of the 1990s. And because at that time we didn't have the Gospel according to Spiritism translated. And she spent 30 years in Brazil, knew Chico Xavier personally, and she followed Chico's recommendation to go back to the UK and start disseminating Spiritism in English, which is something that me and Jussara personally learned from her when we lived 2.5 years in London, and we met her there. And she was the first one that told us, you have to practice Spiritism in the language of the country you are living. And I never forgot about that. But
so it was a British lady, right? Janet Duncan and Anne Blackwell. And the reason why, Anne Blackwell and others did not translate the gospel is because, since we were talking more about the spiritualist movement, they were not that much interested in the more moral religious aspect. So there was never an interest before her in the 90s. Actually, she translated in the 90s to do this work, which is absolutely amazing.
Janet's still alive with 96 years old, right? Or 97 years
96.
old.
Yeah, Janet Duncan is one of those people that if you've met her, I personally feel this way. I felt honored when I met her, because to meet someone who is a pioneer, right? And she came because of Chico Xavier's recommendation. Because I don't know if you guys know the story, but he wrote her name correctly. She gave him an incorrect name. And when he signed the letter, he actually called her Janet Duncan, right? And she was like, wow. And she was also part of the Pinga Fogo, that TV presentation that happened in the 60s. So she was very faithful to what Chico recommended her. And, João, you took the words out of my mouth, because I wanted to pay homage to her as well. And there are actually so many people in the Spiritist movement that we don't know about, and many don't know about, that actually partook in the translation of books as well. And we need to, also mention this, because the efforts of translating books is not easy at all. Those that are involved, we know how many sacrifices it takes and how hard it is. Being faithful to the translation, right? It's not an easy task. And but I also follow very well the first chapter of the book, Among Brothers of Other Lands. It's also a book that is not very well talked about, that does talk about, if we are in the country that is hosting us, that we should respect the host, right? And speak its language. So this is what we try to do. And I remember really well coming to the US in 91. There we go again, the 90s, right? The 90s was the year to be. And I was only 13, but there weren't many books. And once I started learning English, I realized how easier it was for me in English than Portuguese, and there weren't many books. And I remember the first book that I read in English, and it was 2,000 years ago. And I was on a plane, we were going to Brazil, and I couldn't stop crying. I mean, this just goes to show the quality of the translation and how the translators, which, by the way, are still with us today, Daryl Kimball, Marcia Sais, and Eli Hayes, the way they captured the content of the book and brought it in such a beautiful way that we felt it, right? So I felt that my tears, to me, was basically an idea of how well it was translated. I remember the flight attendant asking me if I was okay, and Marcelo was like, yep, she's okay. She's just reading a book. It was really, really a touching book to read in English. And then all of the other books that started coming, I was very grateful for. But João, you asked me about LEAL, right? And LEAL is this publisher also that is very young. It was established in 2014, right, Marcelo? 2014 or 15? Yep. So it's only 10 years old. And as a matter of fact, Joana de Angeli is the spirit author of more of the books that we have translated. And she's also Divaldo Franco's mentor, spirit guide. And she will talk about cycles, and she will say, if a spiritist endeavor, it's a spiritist effort, reaches 10 years, then it actually goes to a new level, right? So I can't believe I just said this. Now I'm scared because it's 2025 and we are really getting into this, embarking on a new level. But what happened is Divaldo coming to the United States of America also, the first time he came was 1974. I wasn't even born yet, so we can see how much Divaldo has been working in our country and doing the work of dissemination of Spiritism. And the people that partook on translating simultaneously his presentation and his lectures, we saw how important also it was to have his books translated into English, because the content in it is actually also, I believe, way ahead of its time. As a matter of fact, when we talk about the psychological series, the books that are available, some of the books already, we do envision these books reaching the hands of psychotherapists of the future that realize, the issues of the immortal spirit, not just this life, but many others that come together and actually at times contributes to the mental illnesses and mental issues that we see happening today. So these books are of the utmost importance, not to mention the books by Amelia Rodriguez, who is a poet that also brings us content of the times of Jesus that are extremely beautiful and really allows us to connect to the Master, to Jesus, in a way that we had not yet heard. Until recently, we saw the book Good News, which is actually by FEB Publisher and a different spirit author, but it also narrates the story. So before we had the Good News, we had Prelude to the Divine Kingdom. It was the first book by Amelia Rodriguez that was translated. And then we had Living with Jesus. And other books are also going to, like The Essential is the new book that is going to be released very soon, which also shows the importance of bringing back Jesus in the way that Joanna de Angelis stated that we should. In the book Jesus in Our Day, she talks about this. It is of the most importance to bring Christ back, not in the crucifixion, in a way that we recognize him as a psychotherapist, as a doctor, as a friend, walking among us, walking beside us. And the books are the representation of just that. And of course, we have other spirit authors that have also been released as well. Manuel Filomeno de Miranda. We actually have 2 new books that are going to be coming out to assist in the establishment of workers in the Spiritist Center, especially in the mediumistic meetings. Mediumship practices and mediumship meetings will be coming out very soon. So this is a very good book for the Spiritist Center that wants to start introducing mediumship in a way that is not very well known here, right? And we know about this. So we are excited, João, because the Marco Prisco is also going to be well known. And we are excited. And what an honor it is to introduce Divaldo through his books, right? We have a lot of people that don't speak Portuguese that come to the lecture and they're like, wow, it is so good to hear the translation, but we want to read the books, right? I want to have the content because we know that a beautiful presentation, beautiful lecture touches us, but eventually we will remember like 1 or 2 points of it that really touches our heart, and then we forget the rest. But the book stays. The book is this enlightenment tool that we need. And I think that none of us are going to see the fruit of how these books are actually going to go into the market and really explode. I think we're just, sowing or throwing the seeds out there, hoping that eventually it's going to be known in many other publishers that are going to want to publish these books. So I hope we stay faithful to the mandate, what has been entrusted to us, because it is just that. It is trusting a gem, a very beautiful treasure that our soul needs so much of.
Andreia, while you were talking, I thought that maybe some of our listeners may have a question or not. Maybe I will raise the question, which is why are we talking so much and focusing so much in terms of books and this spiritual literature in English that are translated? Where are other books? And I mean, I'll try to reason on that, and maybe you guys can help me. But what I was thinking is, not everyone is a Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, and a Francis Bacon or other famous authors that we have in history. And in fact, when we are talking about Spiritism and talking about books and being the recipient as a medium to channel the message from highly evolved spirits, to be completely faithful to this message, and to have like such missionaries' life, like we were talking about Divaldo Pereira Franco and Chico Xavier and so many others. It's not everyone. So the reason why we are talking, or we are focusing so much energy in the translation of books, is because those books are superb. and they are in terms of content, in terms of what they bring, and the faithfulness to the one that is bringing the message, that is the spirit, that is it's not everyone, not all of us can do that. Of course, we can all write books. There are many writers, many people that receive automatic writings and psychographies, but not everyone will be really capable of bringing those messages that makes you cry in an airplane, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we have to remember the mediums that have been receiving these messages that today is like, my God, things that in the 60s and the 40s that Chico Xavier was bringing in the 50s, only now we're catching up to what was written in those books. And I remember in our the Spiritist Center that we participate in, we had weekly meetings of the book Missionaries of the Light. We were following the series because there are 13 books in that series. And I remember John, he was one of the participants, not João, but John. And he said, you can't read these books alone at home. You have to read a chapter and then start to really eating it slowly and really savoring what they're saying, because there's so much content, so much teachings. And he said, my God, more people need to know about this. More people need to know about this, because it does change lives. And I do believe, Jussara, like you said, there are people that are capable of channeling these books. I don't know of anybody yet that is, going to pop up like we had Chico Xavier and Divaldo and Ivone do Amaral Pereira, also a forgotten a Spiritist worker. And hopefully when we get more of her books translated by Sueli Caldas-Schubert and so many other. So we have to take advantage of these and get these books translated, but faithfully, not rushly, but urgently, right? We can't, like Bezerra de Menezes will state in his message, we can't rush it, but we need to have this somewhat urgent, because our society in the moment that we're living is in need of consolation, enlightenment, clarification of so many of the things that are really impacting us, right? So this is why embracing this and trying to be faithful, we ask for your help, whomever's watching. I remember this reader, he reached out to us when we released The Mechanics of Mediumship, and he's an engineer, and he read something. He said, this was not correct. You need to fix this, because when it was translated, he said the term that you guys utilize is incorrect. And he had all the background as to why we shouldn't change the terminology that was used. And we did. We welcomed it. We investigated. And indeed, he was right, because it's like Marcelo likes to joke, traduttore, traitore, right, in Italian, because, you can't be 100% accurate. It is not perfect. It's perfectible. We perfect it. So we welcome the feedback, right, Jussara? I mean, we want that. We want the readers to say, hey, that didn't sound quite right. Can you guys look at this again? So write to us, because it's a teamwork and we can't do it alone. Although the translators are fantastic, any help is always welcome.
Like Nestor Mazzotti, the former president of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation, that is a name that we must mention here, because he was a pioneer of the translations also. He used to say, right, we are not looking for perfection. There is always second edition, third edition, fourth edition to correct the mistakes. But if we are looking for perfection, we are never going to publish anything. I'm just want to go back a little bit, because we kind of jumped ahead, and I want to go back to the beginning, right? When we arrived here, and Jussara mentioned that there were 5 books, right, plus the Gospel that was published in English. But I want also to mention John Zerio, right? When we arrived here, John Zerio was working in a project called Vision 2000, where he was beginning to translate Spiritist books into English. He published the Spirit's book, and then he published the Gospel According to Spiritism, the translations, and then he published a couple of books by Chico Xavier, and actually he published 2,000 years ago. I don't know if the version you read was John Zerio's translation or it was already FEB Publisher translation.
Yeah, it was EDC of America with Ely Reyes and Marcia Size and Daryl Kimball. Yeah.
Okay.
Although, I mean, I applaud, with any effort of any translation, but that was the version I read.
But when we started here, actually, you can see my Sabi close to my name here, Spiritist Alliance for Books, right? Jussara led an effort to translate, starting with the 2 books that were not available of the codification, Heaven and Hell and Genesis. And here we cannot forget to mention Cesar Hayes, who was the sponsor of the translations, the publications of Heaven and Hell and Genesis originally when they were not available, and Sabi published in 2003 and 2003, both books. The Genesis was from the original translation from Mr. Colville. Jussara and her team made went back to the original French and brought to English using some parts of his translation, but basically doing a whole new translation. And Heaven and Hell was actually the work of Anna Blackwell being updated and published at that time. And also Sabi worked on the publication of In the Domain of Mediumship, Nosso Lar, and Disobsession, that 2 of them were later republished by FEB. Disobsession is a book that still not only Sabi has, the FEB has it published, but it hasn't reprinted yet. It doesn't have a new version. So that was the work that was done in the beginning of the 2000s, because when we started, we opened our Spiritist Center in 2001, we needed books to study. And the books were kind of, many of the translations were done manually. We used to print on the UPS shops and give copies to people. So it was, this was before the availability of internet, and it was a labor-intensive work that happened in the beginning of the 2000s. But later, I want to bring Marcelo, because then that's when EDC of America was first started here. I believe it's by the end of the 2000s. So I don't know exactly, but Marcelo, you take it from here. Talk a little bit about EDC of America and then FEB Publisher.
Yes. Well, it was in 2000. Actually, I witnesses this work with Sabi. I had an acquaintance with Maria Levinson. I believe she was one of members of the group of translators. And I was talking to Cesar Reyes in the beginning of the 2002. He mentioned about that, the necessity, the need to have more books in English. He was over here in Miami, and we were talking about, he was here at home. And this is very interesting, how everything is planned accordingly with something that we don't have a minimal idea. But it's the work of God and the work of Jesus making the exact programmation, the programs for us to be each one in the specific position with the specific abilities, so the work of the promising consoler can be established in this beautiful land that we call United States of America. But João, was in 2010, the goal was to make Spiritist books more accessible in different languages, that we received the invitation from the former president of Brazilian Spiritist Federation and from the former Secretary General of the International Spiritist Council, Nestor João Mazzotti, and to establish a publish here in US. And the name was EDC of America, as you well mentioned, under the fictitious name of FEB Publisher. So this publisher would have the mission, back then had the mission of translating, publishing, distributing, both in physical and electronic formats, the Spiritist literature. And of course, just like Sabi and many others that came before us, promoting and distributing across North America, and of course, other countries that US have commercial relationship. And currently, the publisher releases and distributes the work of Allan Kardec in English, in Spanish, in French. I have here a list that I write it down because it says, oh my God, there's books in Spanish, 42 titles translated to Spanish, one in Slovenian, 2 in Finland. We have 54 translations to French, not mentioning the ones that are original in French, the Spiritist Review, the codification. We have over 70 books. I'm just talking about FEB Publisher. Over 70 translations in English. We have 9 in Italian, Swedish, Russian, Greek, German. It was not our work, it was actually, we have to pay homage to the International Spiritist Council and FEB Brazil, because we inherit many of this work done by the Spiritist Federation, the Brazilian Spiritist Federation and the International Spiritist Council back then. But in 2010, EDC of America was launched, was formed, officially formed here under the laws of United States, and the work was initiated back then. In the beginning, there's like a very cool facts in the beginning. I remember when Andreia, now it's very easy for us to have a contract with Amazon, but I remember in Apple and Google Edition and Google Drive and Google Edition. But there's one very specific fact, very fun fact. Andreia was trying to establish a contract with Amazon, Andreia. Am I right?
Yeah, we didn't want to go through a third party because that was the common thing back then. Today, anybody can do anything on Amazon, but right. Back then it was a little bit difficult, and I was having a hard time establishing it with them.
Tell them exactly what you mentioned about, because the movie Nosso Lar was being launched, and Andreia was like, oh my God, where did you learn this? Tell about like the story. What did you say to the guy trying to convince him to be in a very more prolific position, if I may say this word. I use this word.
He was the rep that was dealing with me, and he did some research, and he said that our market was not large enough for him to make an exception to establish for EDC of America at that time. And that was one of the things he said, and then I sent him another email. And 5 p.m. his time, because it was Pacific time, 8 p.m. our time. I had just arrived in front of the Spiritist Center because I had a public meeting, and he called me directly, and he said, unfortunately, I can't approve this, because he started talking about the market and our books, and there weren't many titles yet, and da-da-da-da-da. So I said, you don't understand. I said, one of our titles is actually a bestseller. And there is actually a movie that came out. So I started really building up Nosso Lar, right? Because there was Astro City, but then it was retranslated as Nosso Lar, because that's the name of the colony. It's a name. And so after I made this huge marketing about the movie, and talking about how we were planning on really, exploding also with it becoming a bestseller in the US, because it was a bestseller in Brazil. He said, you know what, I'm going to make an exception. And he approved it. And then a month later, I don't know, I needed something, and I called the office, and they said, he's no longer with the office. He had left. He had on go to another position. So we saw that as one of the little hands of the spirits, allowing us to have this direct print with Amazon, as opposed to going through a third party because of royalties. And by the way, anybody who thinks that books, bring a lot of money, I have some news for you. It does not. There is actually a lot of cost involved with books. So if you can imagine receiving royalties that are as small as it is, imagine going through a third party, right, where we would be the last person to get paid. So it was a huge win for us, and also to try to get all of the books that were coming, not only in Portuguese, but also Spanish and English and all of the other books that were getting translated into Russian and Greek and so on. So it was a really cool thing. And the other cool thing was the assistance that I recognized from above, which was also getting the Apple, right, the books, because at that time also you needed to go through a third party. And we, you know, for some grand reason, we were approved right away as well. So that was really cool.
Cool.
Not me. It wasn't me. It was them. I'm just saying that I just was the, you know, the medium, the technology medium.
But there's one thing interesting, João. I'm going to call you John instead of João.
Right. It's the same.
I call him Johnny.
You call him Johnny, okay. Allow me to call you Johnny too, okay? There's also a very interesting thing, and this is really interesting because it was during one of the marketing initiatives that we promoted.
Oh, Marcelo, I gotta cut you. I remember why. Sorry. We also had a we had to get established with the credit card thing, right, where we needed to process the credit card orders, and you needed to go through legal things and everything, make sure that we weren't, you know, running some monkey business, that it was actually book business. And finally, one day, the president, he reached out to me, and he said that out of curiosity, he went to see what we sold, and he realized that there were Spiritist books. And he said that he was looking for more titles and he didn't know where to find it, because he had found No Solar on Amazon, and he read it to his son. His kid's son was like 8 or 9 years old every night, and he was looking for more titles. So that was really cool as well, because we had to choose between 3 companies, and I chose specifically that one. And lo and behold, the guy was so happy because he realized that he had just approved a company that was selling books that he was looking for. So there you go. Whoop.
This was a coincidence that I really, he's from Colorado, pure American, no word in Portuguese, just English. And this was something like when we received the call from the president of the company, we says like, oh my God, we're going to receive like a no, because they are Spiritist books. But was to the contrary. He was asking for more titles. This is really interesting. We don't have a minimal idea how divine providence and the good spirits work, especially in this land, the United States of America. But going back to a very fun fact and a very interesting thing, we were in one of the marketing initiatives promoted by EDC of America, and something really interesting happened. It was September 2014. We were returning from a trip in Salvador, Bahia, in Brazil, arriving here in Miami, and the idea came up to submit one of the books, Our Daily Bread, translating into English, to a very well-known publishing group. It's a Jenkins group too. So they have like a contest they call like Illumination Book Award contest organized by this group. Jenkins Groups is a company based in Michigan. So the group, basically, they organize annual contests from illuminating books that recognize bestsellers in Christian books in the whole US. And the awards and medals are given in 23 categories, ranging from biblical and devotional studies to books on family, education, children's literature. And they're working here for over 30 years and helping publishers along in the whole U.S. An important fact is that this institution promote the context with literally materials was 28 states that were there together trying to publish their books and presenting their titles so they can maybe win a prize. And 4 countries were participating in this context: France, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. And the judging panel, look at that. The judging panel included was people from all branches of Christianity, but none of them know anything about Spiritism. None of them. So in a country where the words, and we know this, Spiritist and Spiritism are practically unknown to the public, and with a very few Spiritist centers, and Jussara can tell, a little over 100, right, Jussara, in the whole US, Spiritism is considered, I would say, an exotic doctrine, something like that, maybe, for most of the Americans. So our expectations was simply to receive maybe a feedback from the content and to maybe continue improving the translations, as Andreia mentioned, translators, traders, or something like that, because, and John mentioned, always has room to improve and put a new edition, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. But so maybe this is our expectation. Maybe they're going to give us like maybe a feedback about that. But through mysterious path and with a very impartial and careful examination, the Spiritist work, Pão Nosso, Our Daily Bread by Emmanuel, channeled by Francisco Xavier, on January 14, 2015, won with distinction the 3rd place and national award, a winning bronze medal in the Illuminating Christian Book Award, or something like that, right, Andreia? So we were so happy. And I remember Andreia, when she opened the email and saw the message, I said, we won. Was such was so much happiness. And of course, we believe in, from that moment, that this award, and maybe we're going to maybe open doors for the Spiritist literature in this world that we have. This is that we have 330 million people, so many people willing to receive something different from the traditional Christianity. And of course, I'm not saying anything bad about the traditional Christianity, because the same traditional Christianity brought us over here and create the base for us to understand Spiritism in such a way much better. This is something really interesting. And I will say, like, well, Chico Xavier is so humble that he was very comfortable with the 3rd place, with the bronze medal. This is a very fun fact, and maybe we can encourage others who are listening to us, who have like translations, maybe submit titles of Spiritist literature to go through conquest like this. And who knows, maybe more and more books on the streams of the American literature, the American publishing books, the American Christianity, the Book Illumination Book Award. Maybe we can see maybe more awards like that. And this is a very fun fact. Maybe Andreia can add something else that I don't recall at this moment.
No, I mean, we just, we had ideas that would come to our heads, and, you know, it was a little bit crazy, like Marcelo said, to submit a book that was channeled by Chico Xavier, but we need to have the courage of the soul. You know, we have to be brave in the work of disseminating Spiritism, because we never know if we're being guided, you know, if we're being receiving the intuition from the spirits, the benevolent spirits who have a desire that these books really do get everywhere, right? Whether it's in the EPUBs or hard covers or paperback, it doesn't matter how. We need to really be open, you know, what Andrea Lewis calls a spiritual antenna. We need to be really tuned so that we can receive this guidance in the work of propagation of Spiritism. So no, I don't have anything else to hide too. But I do say that today I submitted for 3 books for Christian Living. And I'm not going to say which books because I don't want to jinx it. But hopefully we'll get some of the books by Divaldo, also known in the Spiritist literature in the awards. So
before Jussara saying something that I know you jumped to trying to say something, I remember one of the passage of the book, Our Daily Bread, that was mentioned by the president and of the Jenkins Group, was chapter 40, and I put it over here. That's the book, Our Daily Bread, and allow me to read. It's very short, and it mentioned about a letter that Paul of Tarsus sent to the Hebrews in chapter 8 and verse 10, and he says something like that. The Lord says, I will put my laws in their mind, and I will write them on their heart. I will be their God, and they will be my people. But the explanation by Emmanuel maybe can relate with the work that we all four of us over here and many others are willing to do and are doing it at this moment. Look what Emmanuel says about this passage, this letter that Paul sent to the Hebrews. We will translate the gospel into all languages, for all cultures, exalting its magnificence, emphasizing its sublimity, sowing its poetry, commenting on its truth, interpreting its lessons, impressing it on our reasoning, perfecting our hearts and reforming our minds, renewing laws, improving customs, enlightening pathways. But the time will come when the glad tidings will need to be engraved within us, in the folds of our minds, in the recesses of our hearts, through words and actions, principles and ideals, aspirations and hopes, gestures and thoughts. Because truthfully, if heaven enables us to spread its divine message to the world, one day, it will ask us to convert ourselves into living translations of the gospel on earth. Maybe this chapter 40 from the book, Our Daily Bread, maybe this was the motive. I'm not going to say this because it's kind of maybe this was the motive that we heard before we dive into flesh. Not only us, many of us, with this motivation of put the words of Jesus to the words of the consoler, the promising consoler, translating into books, because Andreia mentioned, we can make a beautiful lecture, not in my case, but the books are staying over here so we can cross millennia and remember that there is a governor for this planet, that it's asking us and waiting for us to love one another as he still loves us, and he will love us for the rest of our existence. And Jussara, I'm sorry, I just got a little emotional because I saw the book here right in front of me, and this was something that
actually it was perfect, Marcelo, because I was going to just say something about what Andreia said, and now I think you kind of brought more things into the whole conversation. And one of the things that I was going to say is exactly why do we do this work, right? And like Andreia said, there are no monetary gains at all. On the contrary, right? Everyone that is in this in this field knows that we at the moment we are paying more than actually receiving anything. Talking about
we get bonus hours, that's what we get. Hopefully.
But why do we do that, and why is that so important? And this is what I think is important for us to mention here. All this work, all this, the dedication that we see from each one of us and so many others that are involved in this, bringing this spiritist literature, is because we need that. We are so much in desperate need of that. And since we were talking about the importance of some of the books and why we translated that, and particularly this one, Our Daily Bread, there is a fun fact that I think it's even more important than the one that you brought in, and then you let me know if you agree with that or not. Is because one day we received an email from a person, from an old man. He wrote saying that he lived in a nursing home, and that he had a condition where he suffered from constant pain. And all of a sudden he got in touch, he managed to get this Our Daily Bread, and he read the book. And he said that normally he has to sleep on the floor because of the pains are so excruciating. But this night that he read Our Daily Bread, he didn't have any pain. He managed to sleep in the bed, and it was such a blessing to him. So I think basically this is the work. This is why we do it, because somehow it is bringing so much healing to people, not only in the spiritual, emotional aspect, but even in the physical aspect. And then he wrote back again saying that he was so amazed by the results of just reading a book, and he was talking to his daughter and things. And then he had another friend in the nursing home that it was blind, and another one, and that they decided to study not only the book, but also he managed to find the Spirit's book. And he said that the first time that they decided to be together and studied the books, it didn't work that well. But then the next meeting that, reunion they had, the blind guy said, what if we started with a prayer? And then they started with a prayer, and then the work was beautiful. And unfortunately, we lost contact with this person. But I mean, those are the little stories that keep us going. And I mean, this is a gold medal. It's not just third place. It's the gold medal. It's something that this is the reason why, regardless of of us understanding, that we cannot provide what we wish it, that it would be the perfect book translation and formatting everything, and but we are trying to do our best, and the intention is always that those words that have been such a blessing in our lives can reach others, and especially can reach others in this country where we were called to be part of since the 90s. And there is so much more work to do, and I feel so blessed because we can do that, and we can do that together.
Jussara, I would like you to talk a little bit about the United States Spiritist Federation and the International Spiritist Council, right? Because there are some books published by the United States Spiritist Federation also, right?
Yeah. What I was thinking is that we have so much more to tell you guys. Maybe we can do a preview. Okay, just a quick preview about more work that we have, not only from, FEB Publisher, LEAL, and United States Spiritist Federation, and the International Spiritist Council, but, there are much more history that we would like to have, for people to know, and for this to be, in our records, as well as a history of this movement. But of course, it seems we were not even beginning the 2000s, and the work in the United States Spiritist Federation in terms of book, we started basically as well in the 2000s, 2008, 2009, and which has been amazing as well. From one book, we are now with 65 titles, the United States Spiritist Federation in English, and we hope to do even more and to be able to do more work. And the International Spiritist Council, and when we were talking also about the EDICE, now the International Spiritist Council decided that it's easier to work through other publishers, and it's not publishing per se books, but it was the one that started everything. And I remember Marcelo actually, again, talking about coincidence, the seed for this work, the EDICE, the branch EDICE, we had Europe, we had this Hispanic, we had the EDICE of America. It was born in Miami. And during the Congress of 2000, I was having a conversation with Nestor Mazzotti, and I told him, listen, Nestor, we need, like the same way that we have FEB, and which means a very good quality in terms of content, in terms of Spiritist literature. We need something like that for the international Spiritist movement, and translations or publications in other languages. And it was everything started reading in Miami in 2000, and 4 years later, it was possible to, I think it was about 4 years that it took for it to come from a seed, from an idea to become a reality. And the International Spiritist Council opened the publisher, and it started working with the titles, and up to today we have some titles, but we work in partnership with FEB Publisher nowadays, and other Spiritist federations worldwide, depending on the language that we are talking about. We can be working. We have been working with the Mexican Federation, with the Spanish Federation, with the Peru Federation, with the United States Spiritist Federation, and so there is a lot going on as well. I think when I think back from the beginning, that I was saying, like in 2000 we had like 5 books. Now we have over 200 titles. It's quite an accomplishment, and I think there are so many people that are behind all that, and there could be more. There could be more, but we have a lot of people working, and we are very thankful to them, because it's a work that really is in our heart, and I think we are blessed for having accepted doing this work and being in this field.
I just want to mention here, when we were talking about the importance of the publications in English, right? Because if we think English is the most well-known language in the world, right? So through English, other countries can make their own translations, or it can be used in their own countries. We know of groups in Denmark that use the books in English to study. And very interestingly, a couple of months ago, we received, the United States Spiritist Federation received an email from an individual in South Africa, and he said, I'm opening the first Spiritist center in South Africa, and I want to have the Spiritist books. What can you help me with it? And then we put him in contact with Peter Hayes, who is the outreach director for the United States Spiritist Federation. And he is there, he already received the books, and he's starting the Spiritist movement in South Africa. And if we didn't have these books in English, right, what could we say to this person? So the books are what is going to provide the link and the continuation, right? I received, talking about Divaldo Franco and his books, Andreia, a couple of months ago, someone bought 5 or 6 copies of Existential Conflicts here with me, and And I thought it was funny because I received in the same day 6 different orders for the book. So I reached out to the first guy that bought, and I said, it's an American. And I said, did you start a study group of the book Existential Conflicts? Because suddenly 6 people bought the book. And he said, no, I practice and teach hypnosis, and my approach to the sessions aligns very well with Divaldo's work, with Joana de Angelis' work. So I recommended in my class today for everyone to buy the book Existential Conflicts, and that's why you received so many orders. And I said, things are happening that we have no idea that is happening out there. But if it's not available, there's nowhere to go, right? And if there is availability, so I think it's always so rewarding when we have these experiences, right? Okay, we are close to the end of our conversation here. We have 5 minutes more, so I'm going to invite each one of you to give your final thoughts about anything to add, any case, anything to add. So I'm going to start here on alphabetical order. Andreia?
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to be in this conversation. It was really fun, and most of all, to present the work by Divaldo. I just wanted to let everybody know that the books that you do buy from LEAL Publisher directly assists Mention of the Way, Mansão do Caminho, this beautiful nonprofit organization in Brazil that helps over 5,000 people daily, all ages. So I just want you to know that all the proceeds actually ceded to the Spiritist Center. Oh my God, I always forget the name because I think in Portuguese and then I think in English. Marcelo.
Centro Espírita, Caminho da Redenção.
Caminho da Redenção. Yeah, I always say
yes,
the Path of Redemption, if we translate it right away. But they have this nonprofit organization directly linked to it. So if you buy a book, all the royalties is ceded to the Mention of the Way. So make sure that you are aware that not only are you enlightening yourself, but you're also contributing to a very noble organization that we have in Brazil. These are kids that are receiving education, they're receiving nourishment, they are receiving assistance, the elderly as well. So it's a very, very beautiful project. If you have any questions about this, you can let us know. And on the website, you're also able to make a donation that actually they do write the receipt back. Unfortunately, you can't, give it in your income tax because it's in Brazil. But just to know that the books that are being purchased is helping directly the Mention of the Way. The books by FEB Publisher, it actually goes towards translating more books, publishing, editing, all the work that goes into it. Because as we mentioned in the beginning, often it does come out of our pockets because we are volunteers and we help. But the more books we sell, the more we are able to do. So make sure that you pass this word along as well to people that are looking for the titles. If you don't buy it on the website and you buy it on the Amazon or Apple or Kindle, it actually also goes to the Mention of the Way. So I just want you to let you know. A lot of the books in English is also going to be made available in Kindle format and Apple. So stay tuned for that. And if you don't receive the marketing information as well, you just have to sign up on our website. And thank you once again to the United States Spiritist Federation for inviting us. I want to give a big kiss to Tanya, who's also doing the work beautifully with this beautiful organization. And also kudos to the International Spiritist Council for the work that is also being done to promote Spiritism in the world.
Thanks, Andreia. Jussara, alphabetical order.
Well, I'm so touched by everything. It's when we think about ourselves and why we were called to do this work, and we cannot even realize because we feel so humble by what it represents. And when we say that, is because the measure that we see how much it represents to us in particular, you know, in our lives, and how much support it's been giving to us. So whatever we want to share with you is exactly that, this joy of living. And like it was said at the beginning, we will pass, but the books will continue here. And since we are talking about Spiritism and we do believe in reincarnation, I'm so sure that in the future, I don't know exactly how long, but let's say 50, 60, 70 years from now, I will be having one of those books that we are talking about here today in my hands, and sending my blessing for the people in the past that were responsible for that. So for every one of you that have been, you know, giving your contribution, and sometimes this contribution is just saying, you know, keep up the good work. We know how hard it is, and I think this is what we need. We need this cheer up as well, and to continue and not to dismay, and not to be thinking about numbers, because this is not what matters. We are just thinking about us as human beings and how much we are in need of this light. And this Spiritist literature is light, and it is a lighthouse in our lives.
Thanks, Jussara. Marcelo?
It was a true blessing to be here with you guys, and I would like to pay homage, exactly, I guess Jussara mentioned this, to the one that came before us, and in a much difficult times than nowadays. Now we have the technology, we have all resources, we have so many possibilities for us to put all these work published and distributed in such a way. But if we go back in time, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years ago, was way much difficult. And they were heroes. They were heroes. Maybe spirits with the determination that I don't have. I'm speaking to myself. I am talking about me. And I am very honored to be part, even though I know I'm being very sincere, even though knowing that I have a lot of limitations, and you can see the way that I express myself. Maybe my English is not, I'm not able to make translations. I can make maybe a little revision, but very limited revision. But I see the group and people that are spread all around the world with all these possibilities to translate from one language to another language, and going back to the same letter that Paul sent to the Hebrew. And I can maybe imagine when Jesus mentioning to so many apostles about like the necessity to translate and to spread the gospel into all possible ways, in all languages, in all cultures, in all, showing the magnificence and the sublimity of these pages of the gospel, and then illuminated by the Spiritist teachings, bringing us the promised consoler, and maybe ending war, ending discrimination, ending so many things that we still struggle nowadays. One day, because, well, Jesus is the governor, the governor of our planet. But just to make a few words, I'm very blessed to be here. I'm very blessed to be part of this Spiritist movement and being a friend of you guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marcelo. So before we close here, just a reminder that the links to the publishers, to the different publishers, will be listed on the description of the video. So if you want to purchase any of the books we mentioned and many other books, you can go directly to the links. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all for watching. And I'm going to invite Andreia to do our final prayer.
Sure. Dear God, Master Jesus and benevolent spirits who watch over us, we are so very grateful for the moment that we have just had, revisiting the past, envisioning the future, and knowing that you are with us, that we can count on you, and how blessed we are to have these beautiful books as enlightening tools as we continue on our spiritual journey. We ask, dear Jesus, that you bless our efforts, that you allow these books to reach the hands of those who are so in need of meeting with you, of rekindling the relationship with God, and realizing their own divinity with their immortality. Bless all of the organizations that were mentioned here, and especially those who came before us, who paved the way for us to walk firmly on. We thank them for their sacrifice, because the work of disseminating Spiritism demands from us a little bit more. Let us always be reminded that we can find in you the strength to find that little bit more within our souls, within the work. Bless each one of us right now connected, and our families as well as our homes, and so be it.